Are you ready? It's coast to coast, we're here and we representing Tom Joyner Foundation. We about to jump right in it. Everybody is woke. HBCUs, let's go. Tradition, trendsetting. Let's do it for the culture. HBCUbiquity.
Welcome to another episode of HBCUbiquity. I'm your host, Thomas Joyner Jr. Question: what do you know about Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated? Besides, of course, the Greek letters, the pyramid hand sign, and the colors crimson and cream. Oh, and if you say, I know they like elephants, no, that doesn't count. Delta Sigma Theta was founded on January 13th, 1913 by 22 women on the campus of Howard University. HU, yeah, you knew that was coming. But since their founding, the sorority has established almost 950 chapters, including international chapters in the Caribbean, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Now, per their website, the mission of the sorority states that they are committed to the constructive development of their members and to public service with a primary focus on the Black community. Additionally, prominent members of the sorority include the Tom Joyner Morning Show's own Kim Whitley and Jackie Reed, Angela Bassett, Nikki Giovanni, Roberta Flack, HU, Mary McLeod Bethune, Janetta Cole, and the late Barbara Jordan. Here at the Tom Joyner Foundation, Delta has been more represented in our staffing since our founding more than pretty much any other Greek letter organization. Deltas have always been a part of the Tom Joyner Foundation, and I might as well mention that my mother is also a proud member. So as the sorority prepares for its national convention that begins on Wednesday, July 10th in New Orleans, I was able to have a long conversation with the 26th national president of the sorority, Miss Beverly Smith. I hope that you enjoy and learn from this conversation as I did. Ms. Smith will preview some of the components of the platforms and proposals that will be introduced at the convention. Even better though, Ms. Smith will discuss with us some of the scholarships and programs that Delta Sigma Theta offers to HBCU students, as well as additional programs and opportunities that the sorority offers to young people, both young men and women across the country throughout the entire year. This episode is not just about Delta. It's about programs, scholarships, and other opportunities for us to get our children and grandchildren engaged in, as Delta has been a pillar of pride and support in the Black community for over 100 years. My guess is, like myself, many of you may not be aware of all that Delta does and can do for us. So are there any Deltas listening today? Let us know your thoughts on this, or chime in just to represent on our social media. You can find us at HBCUbiquity on Twitter, IG, and Facebook at HBCUbiquity. HBCUbiquity. Thank you for listening today, and let's get started. Welcome to HBCUbiquity.
Before we get back to the HBCUbiquity podcast, let's take a look at some Tom Joyner Foundation fundraising highlights. Here's an example of TJF's success.
Hi, my name is Dante Webb, a junior majoring in physics at Dillard University. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to the Dillard University Dallas Alumni Chapter and Tom Joyner Foundation for providing me with this scholarship. After graduation, I will attend Georgia Tech to obtain my master's in mechanical engineering.
To donate to the Tom Joyner Foundation, just log on to www.tomjoynerfoundation.org and you can help a student continue their education at a HBCU.
Welcome back to HBCUbiquity. I'm joined now by the 26th National President and CEO of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Miss Beverly Smith. Good morning, Miss Smith. How are you today?
I am fine, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Got no complaints at all. What's going on at the sorority these days?
Oh, it's a busy time. We have about 17,000 of our members showing up in New Orleans, Louisiana for our national convention, second week in June. So we're spending a lot of time preparing for that. We have a convention every 2 years and regional meetings the other. But the convention is one where we really spend some time handling policy, the business of Delta, programs, lots of workshops. There's always that fun factor in there. So we're excited about coming and spending time in New Orleans. We're right after Essence, so we know we'll have a lot of fellows that are doing both this time. But happy to have it. This is our largest convention since Centennial. So we're ready for the gap.
And what is the theme of this year's convention?
It is, I have the theme, but I also have a vision. We're using that as a theme. Our focus really is joy in our sisterhood, power in our voice, and service in our heart. And that's kind of what Delta is all about. So as we do the business of Delta, we really are focused on those three things. Our store is coming together with 17,000 to really focus on that joy in the sisterhood. Power in our voice is critical to us. We feel that as an organization, and to be honest, with you, as minorities overall, we have got to make sure we use the power in our voice, especially right now.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of things in social action and a lot of focus in making sure we take care of that power. Service in our hearts. Delta was founded as a service organization. Work in the community is important to us. So not only is that my vision for this biennium, but the theme of what we're working on, and we'll be celebrating those three areas throughout the convention.
So, Ms. Smith, following up on that last point about service, can you tell our listeners about Delta Sigma Theta's education initiatives and why access to higher education is important to the sorority?
Oh, absolutely. And I can't emphasize that enough. My last job before I retired last year, I headed all of adult education and GED testing in Georgia, and understanding and seeing firsthand what a lack of education does in terms of not only the ability to get a job, but our self-esteem, in making sure that we understand that we are empowered is critical to us. And without understanding and knowing, because you can't be what you can't see. And then education allows you to broaden that perspective and see that. We've got quite a few programs. Educational development is part of our 5-point programmatic thrust. Just in last year alone, we provided almost $5 million in scholarships to young people and completed almost 80,000 hours of community service for young people and communities to make sure that they can thrive. We do have 3 signature youth programs in education: Delta Academy, Delta Gems, and Embody. We have over 200 of our 900 chapters around the world that focus on at least one of these 3 programs, reaching over 3,000 participants on a regular basis. We've updated the manuals recently. Times have changed. Students worry more about things than they had to before. The issues with hazing, with social media, with bullying, which is another form of hazing at an early age, unfortunately, are things we really have to make sure that our materials address to make sure they stay relevant. Delta Academy is a program for young women ages 11 to 14. It's named after Betty Shabazz, who was one of our sorors and started in 96. The intent is to focus on a positive image of self-esteem and academics, which at a young age is really important to make sure they have a good handle on. Delta Gems then is for young women ages 14 to 18. It expands on the first, but really focuses on getting them ready educationally for post-high school opportunities. We want to equip them to make sure that they can exceed academically, focus on how to manage themselves as young women once they get out there in the greater world, if you will. Try also to make sure the parents stay engaged in what's happening and that they are aware of the programs we have and their participation. Embody, on the other hand, is something we started just a few years ago and really focuses to address the educational crisis that young Black men have, especially between the ages of 11 and 18. In recent years, Black men have the lowest graduation rate of any academic category. I saw that when I worked in adult education. The young men who do not have a high school diploma, really the focus is, and the greatest number happens to be in the Black male community. In Georgia, interestingly enough, the highest educated are Black females when it comes to that, and they have the least needs for those kinds of programs. But really focusing on that. Embody is a little bit different because we also try to focus with men's groups, with the fraternity, with 100 Black men to try and make sure we're working together. Because the other thing it's important for them to see, young Black men, is Black men and women working together in good, strong relationships to support common goals. And that's part of what it does. The last thing we have in terms of youth really is going to happen when we're at the National Convention. Every year we have a presidential youth conference that coincides and runs simultaneously with our national convention. We select about 50 to 75 young people from across the country. They come for a 3-day conference at the national convention. They focus on financial literacy, on leadership, on college prep. They visit college campuses. They go to the HBCUs that are in the area. They're going to be visiting 3 or 4 in the New Orleans area to talk about the historic and cultural reference. Part of what we have to be all about, and one of the things we've focused on this year for everyone, is pride in our heritage. For our young folks, because they're not as engaged as they used to be and from whence we came, if you will, helping them understand their background and their roots makes them stronger and helps them with their own self-esteem. So from the time we got here, and the kinds of things we did to make sure that we could survive in this country to today is enough really to help boost that self-esteem they need to have because they've got that foundation of who they are in the background. And when we visit these college campuses, especially in HBCU, you get an opportunity to see that, because the focus really is, and the emphasis really is focused on what happens with our youth. The last thing we do in an educational space really is we have a foundation, the Delta Research and Education Foundation, which provides scholarships itself, provides internships. We do a lot of work making sure that we educate teachers. DTEC is a program that's in draft in our foundation. It focuses on how to train teachers to be more effective, because it's a two-edged sword. In terms of making sure that we do what we can through Betty Shabazz Academy, through Delta Gems, and through Embody to make sure children are prepared educationally, we can't forget the teachers and the need we have to make teachers stronger. And we have a program in draft, the foundation that researchers try to help teachers be better at what they do to make sure they have the tools that they need to work in that environment. We kind of comprehensively try to look at the education picture.
Ms. Smith, that was a lot. You ladies are doing quite a bit, and I want to talk about that. I want to unpack that little by little.
Sure.
Regarding the first programs that you mentioned, the Academy, the Delta Gems, the Delta Embody. Now, are those focused in different cities or different geographic regions to be accessed? Or can they be accessed anywhere?
Absolutely. Well, all of our chapters are encouraged to have a Delta Gems Academy and Embodied program. So we have hundreds of them all over the country. We have, I think, about 925 chapters at the point right now, and we encourage all of our chapters, and a lot of them do, to make sure that they engage and have those programs. And we don't just focus on children of Deltas. That's not the intent. The intent really is to make sure that we identify and work with all the children in our communities to make those programs stronger. So when Delta has a program, they're open to students, all students. The programs also, the chapters also have workshops. They have something we call a Jabberwock, which is another program. Mm-hmm. They still have the old-fashioned debutante balls, if you will, but that's a year-long. As much as you talk about that being us in the white dresses and the gloves, mm-hmm. Actually, it's a year-long education training program. So that isn't the sole focus. That's a component of it. But the intent really is to make sure that there are education programs to prepare these young ladies as they move out and get ready to go in higher ed. But no, the programs are nationwide. They're all over the country.
I got to digress for a quick second, Ms. Smith, because I recall Jabberwock when I was in high school. Where did the name Jabberwock come from?
I don't know. I'll have to research that.
I didn't mean to push
and find out. No, it's all right. It's all right. We all need an education somewhere, right? It's been, Jabberwocky has been around. I've been a Delta for 51 years. Jabberwock's been around a very long time. The history of it, in terms of where the name came from, I think it was one of our very early programs when we first started getting engaged in working with young people educationally and having some place where they could present themselves, if you will, mm-hmm. Because part of what's important is that self-confidence that you build and taking your own talents and skills, because in a lot of cases it is a talent type show, and be able to speak publicly, to be able to address people publicly, to be able to present yourself and God's gifts that you have publicly is a part of what that's about. So it's probably one of our longest and oldest programs that we have.
You mentioned that all the chapters are encouraged to set these up and to participate in these programs. But for listeners who, especially who either are parents or are students that may be interested in accessing these, how do they go about accessing these? Do they just go to the chapter's Facebook pages or contact the National Sorority? How does that work?
Actually, either of those ways work. In the community, Delta, they will have a phone number listed. All of our chapters, for the most part, are on Facebook. They all have a website. So if you put in your city, and for example, you put in Atlanta, Delta Sigma Theta, actually, in this case, 10 chapters will come up, because some areas we have multiple chapters. Atlanta has 10 alumni chapters and 6 collegiate chapters, so they're all over the place, and some cities do. But most of the chapters, if you just contact them. Now, the interesting thing, even if they don't have Betty Shabazz or the other 2 programs Embody, almost all of them have scholarship programs. So in addition to the fact that you can access the educational programs that they may have, they also offer scholarships. Usually their fundraisers, most of their fundraising money goes to either community service or the scholarships that they have available. So it makes sense for parents to try and connect with, if you know there's a Delta chapter in your area, find out what they are doing for young people. Everybody has programs that are focused on education because that's one of the areas that we really spend a great deal of time and effort in the community.
And for those that are listening that may think otherwise, I just want to confirm that, especially for those scholarships and fundraisers, you don't have to be a Delta or related to a Delta to be able to benefit from these, correct?
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. You do not. Our intent is not self-serving by any means, and most of our programs, as a matter of fact, some of our scholarship programs that we have, we do not allow our chapters to raise the money just for themselves. The intent is, if you want to have a program for members of the sorority for their children, let's have one that's specifically for that. But your main focus really needs to be in how do we get programs and how do we get benefits out of the community and the greater audience that we need to serve.
And regarding things like the academy, especially in the Embody, are those just available to women or can men apply as well?
Well, the Embody program really is focused at men. So young men is the intent of that program, ages 11 to 18. We really try to gear those activities towards young men. We try to partner with the fraternities and the other male organizations in communities so that we can do those jointly. As I mentioned earlier, we really want our young men, they need role models, and they need to make sure both our men and women need role models. If that is not available to them or accessible to them, what can we do to partner with organizations in the community that are focused on making sure our young men are comfortable with themselves, have a great deal of self-esteem considering the kinds of things they face and see on television? We have to do something to mitigate the negative that they see, and that's part of what these programs is about.
Now, Ms. Smith, I want to take the conversation back to HBCUs for a quick second, especially being that it was HBCU where the sorority was founded, correct?
Absolutely. Howard University, 1913.
That's right. So does Delta have targeted programs with HBCUs in general and or specific HBCUs that you want to talk about?
We do. We do. And, one of the programs that's been around the longest is our Distinguished Professor Endowed Chair program. That's an endowment program that we started in 1977. Matter of fact, the first institution to receive a DPEC award was Tuskegee University, which I know you're familiar with. That program was established in 1977. The first award was given to Tuskegee. And interestingly enough, 40 years later, the 2017-2019 award winner was also Tuskegee University. We endow a chair at a university, and we have endowed chairs at 20 HBCUs over time, and we awarded them over $3 million in gifts to endow a chair and to establish a chair to work on a specific issue that is related to research for African Americans. For example, the one last year at Tuskegee was focused on a holistic intervention effort in rural Black counties to stop smoking cessation, because that's such an issue in rural communities in the Black area. So institutions apply for the endowed chair. We have a committee that really focuses on awarding those endowed chairs. The endowment lasts for a 2-year period to allow them to really focus on the project and focus on the research. We encourage students who are in that area also to work with that endowed chair, and that research and the effort that we make with those gives us the opportunity to really understand issues for the Black community greater. In addition to the 20 HBCUs we've awarded them to, we did a special gift award to the 3 Louisiana HBCUs that suffered destruction in Hurricane Katrina to make sure that we could specifically focus on them. The endowed chair for 2019-21, we're going to announce at the public meeting at the National Convention in a couple weeks. And we know, it's always an exciting time. The president of the university is already aware, but we'll make that public announcement then. We also have endowed scholarships at Howard University, the birthplace of the sorority, as you know, in the name of our past national presidents that we have. We've participated in several of the fundraisers that are out there right now. We actively participated in the Save the Bennett campaign That was critical, and we were truly happy. We had a store who was president at the time to focus on that. And speaking of presidents, we've had a lot of HBCU college presidents who were Delta, Spelman, Alabama State, Bennett, Lincoln, Delaware State currently, a lot in executive leadership at these institutions. We try to spend some time focused on those, but in terms of giving scholarships to the universities, to have the endowed chair, probably the longest running program for HBCUs, and continuing to make sure that we support that is critical to us. So the emphasis on HBCUs is definitely one that we have, and one that we try to make sure we support and fund and provide leadership to.
And that's another reason why I'll be so great for you all to be doing your national convention in New Orleans this year, where you are going to be surrounded by 3 HBCUs with other HBCUs nearby, in case you guys want to take a trip over across the bridge there, the causeway that is, to Southern Baton Rouge.
Indeed, and we will. The Presidential Youth Academy. I mentioned that we're having the conference there. I think they're making a trip to several of those institutions. It's just important for them to see and to understand and to realize the heritage that's there.
Ms. Smith,
I will mention, by the way, all my money went to FAMU.
And my brother.
That's where all my children went, and their spouses all went there. So,
oh, really?
Yes. So all my money goes to FAM.
Keep it in the family. You practice what you preach, Ms. Smith. That's great to hear. That's great to hear.
Before we get back to the HBCUbiquity podcast, let's take a look at some Tom Joyner Foundation fundraising highlights. Here's an example of TJF's success.
Hi, my name is Brenna Daniel. I'm a sophomore and aviation science major from Morganton, North Carolina. After completing my degree, I hope to fly for Samaritan's Purse, an international disaster relief ministry. I'd like to thank First Citizens Bank and the Tom Joyner Foundation for the scholarship and helping me to achieve my dream.
To donate to the Tom Joyner Foundation, just log on to www.tomjoynerfoundation.org, and you can help a student continue their education at a HBCU.
Welcome back to HBCUbiquity. Ms. Beverly Smith, you were mentioning Tuskegee, a few minutes ago, and I can tell you that probably the proudest Delta that you have, my mother, Dora Joyner, she also came from Tuskegee, so it's glad to see that there's so much connection there. Now, I'm not sure if you heard, but on yesterday, we teased on our Tom Joyner Foundation social media that I'd be speaking with you on today. And I asked if any of our Delta followers had any questions for you that they'd like for me to pose. So are you ready for a quick lightning round?
Oh, boy. Okay, sure.
Oh, this will be okay. First question. This came from one of our followers. Ms. Smith, what is your vision for the remainder of 2019?
Oh, wow. 2019 and into beyond, it's Delta's vision really is social action. We have a huge need to focus on social action. That's a top priority for us in terms of what we're doing in this country. I honestly feel that as Black organizations coming together, we have the opportunity to change the landscape. If we don't step up to that opportunity, I think we're making a huge mistake. We, Delta, this past year came up with a social action guide, which we shared with the rest of the Divine Nine, because we really want to focus our members on making a difference. We have a webinar. We've been doing sessions all over the country on how to run for office. We currently have 7 members in Congress, sensational 7. I'm so proud of those members. We also focused this past year on making sure SOARs run for office. So we had SOARs run in every region of the country, in most states in the country. And they ran in local elections, state elections, and national elections, and 82% of all Deltas who ran for office won their elections. So
congratulations.
I'm just really thrilled with that, because you have to be at the table to make a difference. You can fight on the outside and protest, and that's really important because they need to understand our voices, but we got to make sure we're at the table at the same time. So we're working on a strategy for the Census 2020. We're working on the impact that we can make in making sure that we're looking at these judgeships, because that's critically important. We're partnering with the National Defense, the Legal Defense Fund, to get training on what to look for in a judge and who we should look for, making sure that we get people who are running for judge, and we have several of those. That's really important. Another thing that we're trying to get through in terms of this year really is that joy in the sisterhood, making sure our chapters are stronger, that we're supporting each other. And as we support each other, we can do a greater job to support the community and community service. So in terms of priority around that, strengthening our bonds and making sure communities feel empowered. Nobody can be everywhere, but we certainly can make sure that those that are in our communities get the right training they need, that young people are trained, but also that those who are in the communities working actively as adults are at the table locally, and that we are empowering them to do the kind of things that they need to do to be stronger. My other emphasis, right, to be honest with you, is to make sure our sorors know that we're remaining relevant in our communities, and we want them to be active, live members in the sisterhood. The stronger we are and the greater our brand is in terms of understanding and make sure other standings understand that a black sorority, regardless of which one it is, because, we're all in there for the same thing, is more than just step shows. We are out there to be community activists. We are out there to be change agents. We are strong leaders, whether it's the brothers or the sorors in the organizations, and we make a difference in those communities. And to make sure that difference is respected and relevant to what's going on now is critically important for all of us.
Ms. Smith, on that note, I just want to interject with a quick question of my own right quick, because you mentioned about the activism, political activism that you are, trying to encourage this year, especially when you mentioned judges, and that brought to mind the 7 black judges, female judges that were, seated in Harris County, Houston, Texas on last year.
Right.
But with you all not having a convention on next year, and not to put you on the spot, but I just want to ask, are any of this year's Democratic presidential candidates coming by this convention to speak to you all?
Yeah, we're working on a plan for that. I won't go into a whole lot of detail on it, but, during the off years, we have regional conferences. So we'll have conferences in our 7 regions, and those are just as large and sold out. They were last year. I think they will be coming up as any others. We actually are working on a strategy to make sure that those candidates, all 1,000 of them, know who we are. And as it narrows down, we want them to understand that we're organizations that they need to speak to. Yeah. And we're going to try and find some ways to make sure that they understand the importance of that. It's the same with the Democratic and Republican Party. We have something called Delta Days at the nation's capital. We go every year. We take about 2,000 Deltas in red to Washington, D.C. to roam the halls of the Senate and the Capitol. And, they know we're coming because whenever they see us in the halls, they, those women in red are here again. But we have done this every year for 30 years. And we continue to do that because they have to see that our presence is felt. We go knock on congressmen's doors. We prepare a strategy to make sure that when we go into those meetings, we have strategized exactly what we're going to say so that the message is singular, but the message is all over the country. So there's a lot of things we do to make sure that our presence remains felt. And we'll continue to do that and have a strategy for that that's coming up.
Well, I would definitely be a little concerned about a candidate that didn't feel the need to go speak to 17,000 professional, college-educated voting black women. So I would...
Wouldn't you know?
Yeah, exactly. But back to the lightning round, the second question that came from social media was, how are the recruits today different than when you joined the sorority?
They have more savvy, sass, and smarts. I think that's generally what I would say. They've grown up quicker than they did when I was coming up. They have a greater exposure to social media. They challenge us more, which I have no problem with because I think sometimes sororities and fraternities need to be challenged to make sure they're relevant to what's going on. And it's important for us to do that. Social media has changed the landscape. They are so bright. I changed out our leadership team a bit this year, and we have several 22-year-olds and 20-year-olds on our board. The age of the board members has decreased somewhat because I think that voice is important. as much as I'd like to say I understand what's going on in the landscape, I know better, and I need to have that younger voice around. And it's some young people are old people mentally, so I'm going to say that. So it's the right kind of people that you have to have in your case. But they're so creative. The creativity, I think the technology that's out there today has allowed them to be more creative younger. They are definitely smarter, not, in the sense that they start learning earlier. I mean, my 2 or 3 year old granddaughter is using the phone. That's how she learned. Yeah. She learned how to spell by texting, which is ridiculous to me. I told her mother, but that's what they do. So they understand, I think, and unfortunately for them, they are exposed to an awful lot that you'd wish they weren't exposed to at such a young age. Yeah. And I think because of that, the recruits that we see today look at the world differently. And we have to, I think, try and reach them where they're at. We have things to teach them, I think, in generations, but I also think that each generation has to respect what each other brings to the table, and that sometimes is the very difficult part of who they are. But my intent and my goal really is, we have to remain a strong organization, and in order to do that, we have to make sure that we are relevant to the needs of our communities, our societies, and the women out there who want to be Delta Sigma Theta members as well.
Ms. Smith, the last question that came off of social media I want to pose to you today is, this one was, name one thing that you want people to remember about your tenure as National President of Delta Sigma Theta.
Oh, one thing that they want me to... that's a tough question. My focus internally really has been on building a strong organization that helps meet the test of time. Foundationally, we're doing some things to strengthen the organization. We're doing some things to brand the organization. We are really focused on outreach. I would like us to be a strong, solid, relevant part of this community, and I think I'm trying to do things in this administration that really focus on that. The emphasis on social media and the types of training that we do with that. We're using social media a whole lot more. We're really focused on outreach more. My goal is to leave this term with a strong foundation for Delta, so it's meant and is built to be an organization for the future, not one that's just meant to be the organization for today.
Well, Ms. Smith, on behalf of especially all of the Deltas that have been a part of the Tom Joyner Foundation for the last 20 years, Ms. Lorraine Lee, Ms. Sonia Curry, Ms. Keisa Foster, Ms. Kim Peters, this has been a pleasure and honor, and I really appreciate you taking the time to and all the information that you have provided on this conversation today. This has been fantastic, to be honest with you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed it. It's good to get the word out, not only about who we are, but who we are as Black people. If we don't learn to come together, because we all have such strengths and such interests, but we got to be more than the colors we wear. We got to be more than the skin tones we bear. We have to put those things aside and make sure that we focus on the strength and what we bring to the society, and the other people know that as well. But it's a pleasure to get a chance to share that word through you and the program that you have. So thank you.
Well, Ms. Beverly Smith, 26th National President and CEO of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, thank you very much, and we'll be back with more HBCU Ubiquity.
Thanks, Tom.
Before we get back to the HBCUbiquity podcast, let's take a look at some Tom Joyner Foundation fundraising highlights. Here's an example of TJF's success.
Hi, my name is Andrew Davis. I am a junior music education major with a concentration in piano performance from Durham, North Carolina. Upon completing my degree, I would like to get a master's in conducting, and I would like to further my education by getting a PhD in either ethnomusicology or musicology, and using that degree to teach at a college or university. Thank you.
To donate to the Tom Joyner Foundation, just log on to www.tomjoynerfoundation.org, and you can help a student continue their education at a HBCU.
Welcome back to HBCU Ubiquity. I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode, and I hope that you found this both entertaining and informative. First off, I want to say thank you to the 26th National President of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Miss Beverly Smith. Miss Smith made herself available for this conversation, and she delivered and expanded upon several nuggets of information that I hope that you found useful. Also, I want to say thank you to all the Deltas and other Divine Nine Greeks that listened to this episode, as well as those that chimed in on our social media earlier this week when we first announced that we would be having Ms. Smith on as the upcoming guest. You know, the fall semester is almost here, and students, including and especially HBCU students, are still looking for ways to pay for this upcoming semester, and maybe the next. Getting accepted, enrolled, and registered is only part of the battle. Paying for college is the other part. Now, some of you may recall last week's conversation with Dr. John Rudley, the former president of Texas Southern University, on the episode about 529 plans. During that episode, Dr. Rudley dropped several jewels, but one that stood out for me was how he stressed the need for HBCUs to have more funds to offer scholarships so as to attract and retain students. Now, simply put, scholarship support keeps our students at HBCUs, but it also brings them to HBCUs. If you've listened to previous episodes of HBCUbiquity, you've heard plenty of talk about the financial needs of HBCU students, along with suggestions and guidance to help pay for school without taking out loans. Here at the Tom Joyner Foundation, we're passionate about that. Very passionate. We need scholarships for these students so that they can not only be a reflection of our schools, but so they can also be a part of the next generation of HBCU benefactors. At the end of the day, it's all of our fault when our students have to leave an HBCU to go to a PWI because they can't afford the HBCU. When our best and our brightest students are headhunted by PWIs, they eventually become part of that PWI's legacy, and quite frankly, their donor role, along with being yet another example of our students choosing them over the HBCU of their choice. Like I said, at the Tom Joyner Foundation, we're passionate about HBCU scholarships, and you can help us indulge in this passion. www.tomjoynerfoundation.org/donate. Please visit that address and visit as often as you can. No donation is too small or too big. Of course, it's not too big, but it's real easy. Just select a school from the drop-down menu, and that includes every HBCU that's in existence: accredited, non-accredited, public, and private. Or just make a donation for general support. Again, that's www.tomjoynerfoundation.org/donate. This is Thomas Joyner Jr., and thank you for listening to this week's episode of HBCUbiquity. Please come back next week for another great conversation with a purpose. Thank you.